What's up, guys? Welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Ordell for Season 2, Episode 4 of the SGA series. We got a great Snyder variation game by my guy Zeech and I. And if you haven't heard of the Snyder before, it's a very strong option for white against the Sicilian defense, in which case we're going to play this move b3. This may seem passive, but this bishop on b2 is an absolute monster, as you're going to see in this game. Here we see black continue with knight c6, and now the fianchettoing of this bishop, followed by bishop b5, pinning the knight on c6, a key idea in the Snyder, getting both of our bishops involved here in this game. And after this move, bishop d7, we see f4 expanding on the king side and really trying to wipe out this entire fifth rank, making space and giving our pieces room to develop. Here we see from black the move a6, in which case, okay, we'll give up our bishop, we'll take on c6, continue now with a move like queen e2 defending this pawn. And here from black we see the move knight f6. Here black trying to double up on this pawn, and okay, we can simply defend it with d3, and then the very next two moves get both of our back rank knights involved with knight f3 and knight bd2. Here both sides castle king side, and now from black we see b5, black trying to expand on the queen side of the board. And now from white, a very impressive move, c4. Now guys, most of the time I wouldn't recommend putting pawns on c4, d3, and e4, but guys, there is a time and place for it, this being one of them. First off, there's no pieces from black in any near future that's going to be able to come to this d4 square, right? This is not a knight, this is a bishop on c6, and on top of that, we have it pretty well defended by our bishop on b2, as well as this knight on the f-file, and on top of that, we have a bishop on a dark square, so we should put our pawns on the light squares so that this bishop has more room and more activity to move around and make a difference in this game. Very nice move, locking up the queen side. And now from black we see this move knight d7, in which case white plays another very playable and practical move with king h1. If you watch master and grandmaster level games, you're gonna see a move like king h1 quite a bit. What is this move doing? Well, it's obviously not threatening anything. It's not trying to checkmate this king on g8 in the next 5 to 10 moves. But what it is doing is giving our king greater safety. And in the Sicilian defense especially, you don't know when things are gonna break open. So why not just get our king out of the way of any potential checks on the a7 to g1 diagonal and just get our king to safety. Here from black we see the move rook e1, and now from white, rook ae1, getting these rooks locked and loaded behind the pawns on the e and f files. And now from black, bishop f8, in which case we see this move queen f2. Guys, in chess you got to be asking yourself, how can we improve the positioning of our pieces? And this queen on f2, in my opinion, is much better than the queen on e2, because this queen eyes both the square of d4 to support a potential d4 push, and on top of that eyes this square of g3, which would put even more pressure on the g7 pawn. Here black continues to advance with a5 on the queen side, and now from white, d4 breaking through in the center. Now in this game we see black play a4, just continuing to advance, and this is by no means a blunder or a huge mistake, but I do think that black missed an interesting opportunity here, and that is taking with b takes d4. Now first off, if we take back with the b pawn, black could play rook b8 and attack our bishop on b2. Is that winning for black? By no means, but they do have a more active and playable game there, especially on the queen side with full control of that b file. And if we take back with the knight, there's actually a very interesting chess opening trick that black could have used here. Guys, oftentimes when you're playing in the opening, you may see one of your opponent's minor pieces hanging out somewhere towards the center of the board. In this instance, white's knight is on c4. It would be great if somehow black could get a minor or major piece on e4 so that they could play d5 and simply fork both of them. So in this case, black could play the move bishop takes e4, whole idea being, yes, we only get a piece for a pawn, but the very next move, we play d5, and obviously white would much rather save their rook than their knight, and the moment that this rook runs away, you get your material right back. You can take on d4, continue now with a move like rook c8. Obviously here black has great control of that c5 square. A move like queen c7 is on the way, and black has a playable game, and obviously white's attacking chances on the king side have definitely fizzled out a little bit. However, here from black we do not see the move b takes c4, but instead the move a4, as mentioned, just expanding on the queen side. And black does have quite a bit of pressure coming on these b and c pawns, but we now see white continue with d5. Right now our boy Z is going, look, I am trying to minimize the activity of this bishop on c6 and trying to maximize the activity of my dark squared bishop. What do I mean? Well, after this bishop runs away to the square of b7, it's really looking like a tall pawn. Now, yes, technically it is attacking one of our own pawns. It is attacking a white pawn, but it's pretty well defended. And on the flip side, our bishop on b2, as mentioned, is extremely active, and we see white build a pawn respond this with the move queen g3. And some of you guys may be wondering, okay, wait, why would white ever want to play a move like this? This doesn't really threaten anything. But guys, in chess, threats are always great, but sometimes just building the tension and putting some pressure on the opponent is exactly what you need. This doesn't make a threat of checkmate, but notice now that this bishop on f8 is a prisoner to the pawn on g7, and the moment this bishop moves from this exact square, we're simply going to have a mate in one. So slowly but surely, we are expanding our position, expanding our control in the center, and really trying to gain more activity and giving black somewhat of an awkward game to work with here. Black continues by trying to create some counterplay by a takes b3, followed by rook a2. And now from white, notice we don't see a move from Z like something passive, bishop c1, but this move rook b1. Z's going, look, I am trying to keep my bishop on b2. I like this minor piece, putting pressure on g7. I'm simply going to defend it. That's cool. That's cool that you're attacking my bishop. I'm simply going to defend it, and I'm going to continue putting pressure on the king side. Here, black continues to try to break things open with e takes d5, and we now see c takes d5, taking towards the center of the board, and again, putting as much pressure on the king side as we possibly can. And honestly, in this position, I think that black should have played a move like knight f6, putting some pressure on our center, putting some pressure on e4. Obviously, if e5 is ever played, the pawn on d5 is going to fall. And notice if knight f6 is played, we can't take this knight, unless, of course, we want to lose our bishop because of queen takes f6 as the queen defends it. But here we see the move g6. And yes, I'm going to admit, I mean, this is a very playable move. In fact, I see this quite a bit. I myself have played moves like this before. It's very uncomfortable playing a position where you have a bishop on b2 and a queen on g3. I mean, just pouncing down on that pawn. It's very tempting just to play a move like g6 and then try to breathe for a second. But notice now that the dark squares are extremely weak around this pawn. And particularly now, after this move f5, which Z played, this queen is putting pressure on d6. Black probably wanted to play a move like bishop g7 and try to trade down material here. But notice now, if this bishop moves, we're simply going to win this pawn on d6 after capturing off that bishop. That is one option that white has in that game. So now black has to make the choice. Okay, do they want to play bishop g7 and fight for this diagonal but potentially lose the pawn on d6? Or do they want to try to hold on to the pawn? Here black tries to hold on to the pawn with the move of knight e5. But I honestly think that this was a big mistake because now white's simply going to continue breaking things open. F takes g6. In a position like this, guys, when you are on the attack, you got to trade down this f pawn for the pawn on g6. And now we see this move knight takes e5, followed by knight f3. I mean, just continuing to add the pressure against that centralized pawn. And notice how black can't really defend it, or at least defend it well, right? I mean, if a move like bishop g7, we don't really care because we're simply going to snatch off that pawn on e5. And because we traded down pawns on g6, this pawn no longer has two defenders. It only has one. So if a move like f6 is played, we're going to say thank you for the pawn on g6. So here black out of desperation goes, look, I'm just trying to take off this bishop. This bishop's annoying me. I'm going to give it the exchange, and here white obviously takes the rook back. And now we see black continue with bishop g7, in which case white continues with knight g5. Very nice move from Z here, putting some pressure on the pawn on f7. And here black defends the pawn with rook e7, just trying to hold this game together. And notice now we had a pawn on f2, we marched it up to f5, we took on g6, and now this h file is wide open. We see this move queen h4, and now from black the move bishop c8. I mean, there's simply no way for black to try to stop this move queen h7 check. But now after king f8, I mean, we just snatch off the pawn on g6, and here black resigned. A very nice Snyder variation game by our guy Z. Thanks for watching today's video. If you'd like to learn more on the theory behind the Snyder variation, click that video to the left. If you'd like to see my top 5 underrated chess openings for white against the Sicilian defense, click that video to the right. Leave a comment down below to let me know what other videos you'd like to see covered on this channel. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.